Hi, welcome to Oakleaf Cakes Bake Shop. My name is Amanda. Today we're going to be showing you how to make our famous Italian meringue buttercream. This is our favorite buttercream. It's light and whipped and silky, and we use it on almost all of our cakes. We really love it. It's amazing frosting, and we hope you give it a try. So Italian meringue buttercream consists of boiling a sugar syrup and then whipping a meringue at the same time. And then once this is to stiff peaks and this is at 250 degrees, then we combine the two and then we get a nice fluffy meringue. And at the very end, we're going to be adding the butter and the vanilla so we have a nice buttercream. So the first thing you want to do is start your sugar syrup. So you have a pot on the stove and you have a half a cup of water. That goes in. And you can turn it up pretty high, maybe medium, medium-high. You just want to get things boiling. And then you want to have a candy thermometer, and you want to watch it. You want to keep an eye on it, and you want it to get up to 250 degrees before we add it to the meringue. So you add in the half a cup of water, and then we have 1.5 cups of sugar. Go in. You don't really have to stir this. The action of the boiling will stir it for you. Just make sure there's no, you can use the thermometer, just make sure there's no dry sugar stuck on the bottom of the pan, as that will burn as you're heating. So just make sure all that sugar is wet, and then from then on you don't have to do any stirring. So just let that go. Meanwhile, get your bowl ready. You want to have a stand mixer. If you wanted to use a handheld mixer, you could, but you're going to need a friend. The friend will help you pour the hot sugar syrup while you're mixing. Otherwise, you might, unless you're good at acrobats and you're not afraid of getting burnt. So a stand mixer is best. If you have a 4-quart mixer, then maybe you'll have to adjust this recipe or carefully keep an eye on it so that it doesn't overflow. Otherwise, if you have a 6-quart or larger, this one specifically is an 8-quart mixer. So you want to have a bowl that's nice and dry and clean and is free of any grease or fat or wetness of any kind. When whipping meringue, it's important to have all of those things. Otherwise, if your bowl has any grease on it or any fat, the protein in the egg whites just won't whip up to the right volume or whip at all. So that's clean and dry. We have 1 cup of egg whites, which you can buy from the store in a carton if it's available. Otherwise, you can go ahead and you can separate the eggs into yolks and whites. Just make sure that if you do separate yolks and whites, that you're careful, extra careful, not to get any yolks in the whites that are going to be whipped, because the fat in the yolks will actually prevent the whites from whipping. So that's important for whipping a meringue. So 1 cup of egg whites in. On the mixer, you want to use the whisk attachment. That can go on. And we're watching the sugar syrup boil. I have it on a pretty high temperature, so just be careful, find the right mix of medium-high to high temperature on your stove. You want to get the timing right to have both ready at the same time. So the trick that we found timing-wise is that once our sugar syrup gets to 230 degrees, that is when we can start whipping the egg whites. The timing of that seems to be pretty perfect. So I'm just going to wait a couple more degrees and then we can start the egg whites. And if you have a candy thermometer, that's really the best, going to be the most successful for the recipe. If you don't, you could carefully keep an eye on your sugar, which will be easier, you know, over repetition. When you make more batches, you can tell the difference in the sugar as it's boiling. So when it starts, like right now, we're at 230 and it's boiling and the bubbles are really fast and quick and they're popping and it's still pretty much a liquid. When it gets closer to 250, it'll slow down and be more viscous and more syrupy. So, and it will turn slightly amber when it's more ready. So we're just above 230 degrees. I'm going to start my egg whites. And if you start those on medium, then you can go ahead and add cream of tartar. Cream of tartar is the ingredient that will help stabilize the egg whites as they're whipping. It keeps them from deflating too soon. So that's just 1 teaspoon. So now that the sugar syrup is at 240, you can see that the bubbles have really gotten to be bigger. They pop less quick and it's a little more syrupy. And the egg whites we're going to whip until they are soft peaks, and at that point we're going to add the second measurement of sugar. So for whipping the egg whites, you can definitely have the speed up on high. You want to get as much air whipped in there as possible, keeping an eye on your sugar syrup at the same time. All right, so it's been a couple minutes, and now we have egg whites that are at soft peaks. And we have egg whites that are fluffy, but they're not really holding a lot of shape. They're thick enough, but they don't hold up a nice peak at the top. So we're gonna turn them on. And this is where, soft peaks is where you can add the extra sugar, which is 1/3 cup plus 2 tablespoons. Add a little bit at a time. The extra sugar helps to sweeten the meringue, but it also helps to aerate it. And then once that sugar's in, we're gonna let it go for a couple more minutes, and then you'll get some glossier texture to the meringue, and we'll whip it until it gets to stiff peaks. And stiff peaks will be at the point where we can add our sugar. So the sugar syrup we have at 250. You can see the bubbles are a little bit stickier. It's more like a syrup, and it has a slight amber color. And the meringue, it's now at stiff peaks. You can see it's a lot glossier, and now it holds shape where you have a nice peak. Sticks straight up. So that's ready to go. And with the speed on a lower speed, you want to add your sugar syrup. And what you want to do is add the syrup in while it's going, and you want to keep the sugar from getting on the side of the bowl too much. The bowl is chilled, and so that will harden the sugar, and you don't want to have too many hard sugar pieces in your frosting. That would be wrong texture-wise. So what you want to do is aim the sugar right in between the whisk and the side of the bowl. No need to scrape the bowl here or scrape the pot. That'll cause the sugar to crystallize and it really won't come out. So just pour out as much as you can, and that's it. Okay, and now we can return the speed back up to medium, and we're gonna just wait a few minutes, maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes, depending on your mixer and temperature of the room and everything. Basically, you just added 250 degrees sugar syrup into your meringue, so the bowl is going to be hot. Your meringue is hot. So if you were to add butter right now, it would turn into a soupy mess, and you would just have soup. So in order to get buttercream, what you want is to have this cool back down to room temperature, and you want your butter to be at room temperature. So while this is whipping, we can get our butter chopped up. And it's a 1.5 pounds of butter, which seems like a lot, but if you're going to be frosting a cake or 2 or a couple dozen cupcakes, that really gets spread out over several servings, so nobody's going to be eating 1.5 pounds of butter directly. So we can get that chopped up. 1.5 pounds is 6 sticks. If you're making it at home and you have butter that's in sticks, it's 6 of them. If you have your butter out at room temperature all day, then that's good, then you're ready to go. If your butter is straight out of the fridge, as mine is, then you can microwave it for a few seconds, and until it's soft enough where if you were to press on the top, you sort of get a nice indent. You don't want it melty mushy, but you don't also want it, this is too hard. If this is too cold, you'll get a buttercream that's sort of curdly and stiff. And if it's too soft, if it's too melty, you won't get any volume. You'll just have more of a soup. That's pretty good. Okay, so our butter is more soft. When I give it a press, it sort of holds an indent, and that's what you want for your butter. So once that's ready, then we just need to wait for our meringue to cool down. What you can do is you can sort of feel the temperature of the bowl. Once that's closer to room temperature, then you're good to go. Otherwise, you can also sort of hold your hand here, and you can feel the warm air coming out. Once that cools down a little bit, then you'll be good to go. You definitely want to make sure this is room temperature so you don't have soup. So where the meringue is at right now, it's just about cool, and you can see that it's gotten a lot glossier and shinier, and it has a lot more like stringy texture and ribbons. So it's definitely ready for the butter. So now that our meringue is nice and cooled down, we can add the butter, add a couple tablespoons at a time. And because I said earlier that whipping meringue, you want to make sure your bowl is clean and dry, doesn't have any fat or grease in it. So when you add the butter, of course your meringue will deflate a little bit, so don't be scared. You didn't do it wrong. It will kind of deflate your whole mixture, but once you get all of the butter in there, it'll eventually come back, so don't be scared. So Italian meringue is what we had before we added the butter, so you could just use that as if you're making a lemon meringue pie or something, or if you had cupcakes you wanted to do some toasted meringue on, that's what you would have. Once that cools down, you have Italian meringue. To get buttercream, of course, we add the butter. About halfway through, I stop and scrape down just to make sure I got all the meringue mixed in together. And we can keep adding the butter. Make sure you get all of the butter in there. There's no such thing as a low-fat buttercream. Make sure you use all of it. So the buttercream you saw went from sort of a soupy, buttery mess to actually, as it whips, it comes and gets more texture. And now at this point, we actually have a nice fluffy buttercream with lots of volume. The last step, now that we have all of the butter in there, is to add the vanilla. So no matter what flavor we're gonna make, we always wanna add the vanilla to the frosting. It gives a nice undertone for flavors, and then it's just always ready to be vanilla. And you wanna do a tablespoon plus a teaspoon. And try not to skimp, don't use imitation vanilla. This is, especially if you're only making vanilla Italian meringue, this is the only flavor is vanilla and butter and some sugar, so there's not much else going on. So you want to make sure you have good quality butter, good quality vanilla, otherwise it's just gonna taste fake. And I didn't mention it earlier, definitely try to use, or definitely only use unsalted butter. You don't really want salty buttercream. Okay, we'll give it one more good scrape on the side to make sure everything is mixed in, and then we have our buttercream. And it's a white buttercream, but it's slight ivory in color because we did the vanilla, we did the butter, and it should have this nice fluffy texture. It should still look like the stiff peaks. It should hold its shape, which will, when you put it in a piping bag and do some frosting, will hold the shape that you want, allow you to make some roses. So once it's done, it'll have this nice like floppy buttercream sound. So this is done. This is ready to use right as it is. Italian meringue is best used at room temperature, so you can, make your buttercream and use it right now. It's not going to do. So if you compare it to American buttercream, where it's powdered sugar based, that would eventually get a crust as it sits at room temperature. This will never do that because you've boiled your sugar syrup and it's mixed in with the butter. So this will always be at room temperature and nice and soft and glossy and ready to go. What will happen as it sits for a few minutes is it will get kind of a spongy texture, and if that happens before you use it, all you want to do is just give it another whip with your spatula, or you can put it back on the mixer, and that'll get rid of some of the weird air bubbles that will be kind of difficult to work with. So with this recipe, it's enough buttercream if you have, depends on how many layers you have, if you have a 2 or 3 layer, maybe 8-inch or 9-inch cake, this will frost that. If you're doubtful, maybe your cake is a little taller, if you have a lot of buttercream roses on top or something, maybe do a bigger batch or a double batch. It's always better to have more frosting than not enough. So yeah, either an 8 or 9-inch cake, it'll frost, or if you have a couple dozen cupcakes, that'll be enough for that as well. So you can make this and use it right now. It's ready to go. If you wanted to make it ahead of time, just transfer this into a microwavable container with a lid, put it in the fridge. You can keep it in the fridge for up to 2 weeks. And then if you want to use it, then just take it out and either let it sit at room temperature for a few hours, or you can throw it in the microwave for a few seconds. But you want to bring it back to room temperature, re-whip it in the mixer, and then it's good to go again. So feel free to make it in advance. And then what you can do to flavor this, is, so we've made it vanilla, that's ready to go. If you wanted to make it chocolate, what you could do is add some melted chocolate, melted but not hot, because again, you don't want to melt your butter. You can also add like lemon curd, or you can add some preserves like strawberry preserves. Even Nutella is really good, or some cinnamon if you have a spice cake. So whatever you want, as long as you're not adding too much liquid. So you don't want to add any juices or fresh fruit. You want to have nice concentrated flavors to add to your buttercream. Italian meringue is what we use to frost most of our custom cakes and gourmet cakes that you get in our store and our cupcakes. So give it a try and let us know what you think. If you like our video, feel free to like and subscribe and do the thing, and let us know what you think of the frosting.